Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be your on-camera facilitator for this Sonder Social Week 1 for October weekly setup. Feel like a little bit of a deja vu because I hosted the monthly setup this morning. So if you were there, we welcome you back here. I'm already seeing some of our returning socialers as well as some of those new folks that joined us this morning. So now you're back for round two. So we set up our monthly earlier and set up our weekly now. And with that being said, I also want to give a shout out to my co-facilitator, Jen O, who you will see in the chat. The former Team Texas weekend is upon us because we're going to be switching roles tomorrow for that event tomorrow and kind of all those. So you'll get all the wonderful perspective from both of us, but we are definitely here. We are excited and we're so glad to now kick off week 1. And so I feel like this is one of those kind of slightly weird weeks because you will be able to work a little bit in your September journal to close that out for some of the exercises, as well as you can also shift into your October journal as well. There is no kind of rules against it. You can work on either. Some people definitely want to keep all of the days in the same journal, while others are perfectly fine with starting them over. So I will try to queue up both pages for the September and October journal. So it's one of those, let us know if you get a little confused or anything like that, because there are a couple different options, but definitely do whatever you need to do to make your journal work for you. And so, as I said, double check with you can participate in as much or as little in the socials as you want. But if you want to share in the group chat, just double check that it is set to everyone. If it is set to hosts and panelists, that comes to just myself and Jen. And don't worry, we are happy to answer questions there, but we usually assume you want other people's inspiration and perspectives, as well as provide, kind of the thoughts, the support, the strength, all of those there. So just keep that in mind. It will default. And I think it was Andrea that mentioned that the chat is going by a little bit quickly. You can always pause the chat by clicking on one of the messages up at the top, and then you can manually scroll as you go. Because if you are not aware, if this is your certainly first social, it is a lot of overload of the census. You have the chat that's going to be going, the music's going to be playing, I'm going to be talking, I'm going to be showing examples on the slides, and you're also going to want to be working on your journal. So this session is recorded and they do put them up pretty quickly. So you can always kind of come back to get that inspiration. And you can always double check there. But as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions, though we do like to share all of those sticker recommendations, pen recommendations, apps. We talk about the products that Silk and Sonder offer. So we certainly allow and love to have those conversations. Let's just keep in mind to not detract from the reason we're here, which is the setup. And as always, we will most likely redirect a lot of those customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com, especially around individual accounting. And so for sure, if you are still waiting on your October journal or any issues in that regard, that's going to have to go to hello@silkandsonder.com, as Jen and I don't really have access to that information. But we can always bubble it up to HQ if you think that is necessary. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So that means if you had a rough go, if September is not what you wanted it to be, and you're excited to move into October, we are glad that you are. We are going to still reflect on the previous week. So if you didn't have a great week, I am one of those people that I didn't have the greatest of weeks. So it is setting up kind of those emotional boundaries and kind of things that you just, as I always said, you shouldn't leave these socials in a worse mood than you showed up. I feel like we can always do that kind of achievement and pushing ourselves and doing those reflections. But I feel like if you are leaving not as happy as you got here, I haven't done my job. So just keep that in mind. And we are glad that you've come exactly as you are, because that is what we're here for. You have now set aside this next hour to be with you and your self-care journey. So, new month, new week, new theme. And Jen and I were actually talking about this beforehand, that it's been such a really nice transition between enchantment and bravery and now resilience because I feel like enchantment was so lovely. It was so fun. It was fluffy. It was great. And it was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And then all of my worst fears in self-reflection came to life in bravery. That was because I wrote the mind maps. So those were my biggest fears. Those are the questions that I don't like to answer. But we included that. So bravery, I know, was tough, and we had to do some tough work. And I think everyone really did. It was quite amazing. But I also think that resilience is now a great transition to that because it's now celebrating the kind of build back up. So if you beat yourself up in bravery, or if you felt a little bad about it, this is now, I feel like, that perfect one that is going to come back to because I think everything about resilience is that celebration of the tough things. And so I came across these two particular quotes with resilience isn't a single skill. It's a variety of skills and coping mechanisms to bounce back from bumps in the road as well as failures. You should focus on emphasizing the positive. And then going hand in hand with that, our resilience increases as we recognize the magnitude of what we have already accomplished. So I do think this is one of those that we can certainly lean into the celebration of how far we have come. Because at the same time, we are all not perfect and we're going to have some stumbling blocks. We're going to fall on our faces. It's the picking yourselves back up and being able to use it as what did I learn or what did I get from this, and not always the how did I get here. It's that moving past, using that sphere of influence of what can I control and what can I not control. And I think it's one of those that it works so well, but I think there is still so much positivity and optimism that could be tied into it that even I struggle a little bit with finding in bravery because I certainly found myself just falling a bit short across the board there. But now I can kind of lean into the learning and the celebration and being able to recognize the accomplishments that have already been made, as well as still moving forward. Because at the end of the day, sometimes the best thing that you do each day is to get up and try again. And so we are going to present our week one for that resilience mind map. We are also going to do our rosebud thorn, which can be done in two different places depending on which journal you're going to be working on. And same thing with those weekly setup pages. So we will be able to kind of work through those as we go through it. And don't worry, we will make sure that you can follow along with us. But if you have questions, let us know because myself and Jen can answer those. So, mind map. A new month, a new mind map. And so we are still keeping these to 4 questions, even though there are multiple weeks in October. There are more than that. So we'll have these four, and then we'll have a bonus one a little bit later. So you're going to find a blank page in your journal, or maybe you utilize the weekly scratch pad or repurpose some of the other sections. I know we have a lot of folks that are team last page just because it can get there pretty easily. So this is one that is not printed in the journal, and you're going to be able to kind of design it and cultivate it to your own idea. And so this is also an invitation to explore the quiet yet powerful strength that lives within you. And so, again, we often think of resilience as that ability to bounce back, but it is so much more than that. And I wholeheartedly agree. It's the inner anchor that keeps you steady in a storm, the wisdom you gain from past challenges, and the light you carry that can also illuminate the path for others. As we said, so many factors lead into resilience other than just the single act of kind of getting up and moving on. And so our weekly prompts will guide you to take a look at resistance not as the destination, but a dynamic practice that has different facets that you can include in your kind of tool belt. So for week one, we're going to frame it as what helps me feel most grounded, steady, and strong within myself. And so that is where we're going to start, kind of with that idea. And then there are a couple additional ways that we can build that out. So you can focus on the what helps me feel most grounded, steady, and strong within myself, or you can overlay some of these other options because we know that resilience starts with returning to what centers us. In moments of stress or uncertainty, what practices, places, or people help you feel like yourself again? And then another thing is you can also treat it as a list with the naming 3 grounding anchors in your life, because these can be rituals, relationships, beliefs, or habits that help you stay rooted. And so, how can you call on them more intentionally? We'll come back to this slide, but I have also included those questions as the first three points on the left. And I've also included some of the best advice I received when I was working with my therapist was to create a distractions list. And that's where I feel like this is what created it because I would get so in my head. So I have a distraction list that I always keep as a memo on my phone. So I always have access to it as just gentle reminders to kind of what can I do to kind of take a little bit more control? And then I would also ask the question of, have you found these yet? Or do you need to spend some time finding them? Because I feel like the grounding and anchoring things can absolutely change depending on what milestone you are in your life, what chapter you're in your life. Because unfortunately, some of the characters that we bring into those chapters may not always be around. So it's kind of, do you need to look at some of those more internal cues? And so that's kind of what I focused on. For me, the grounding and anchoring. Music is a huge thing that I reach for. I can absolutely cultivate many playlists to not only live in the mood that I'm currently feeling, but kind of help, alter it, get happier. It's so much adjustment that I feel like I'm so in tune to it. And I just feel like it works with that. So I'm always reaching for some sort of song to kind of go around those for that. I also find a lot of great grounding, steadying, and great advice from my dad. While he will poke fun, and we have those moments, I certainly have the ability to kind of turn that off and get really realistic feedback and kind of talk through scenarios. And then I am a ocean water person, so even seeking bodies of water, I feel like helps calm, collect me. And I also found with the distraction list through the help with my therapist is that I actually sometimes just need, we always called it the longer walk. Because at work, I would certainly have to come up with ways to explain things without taking it out on people. So the people that worked with me were amazing, and they could always see it on my face because they'd be like, "Do we need to take the long way back to the office?" And it's like, "Yeah, we kind of need to do." And we would walk in silence, and I was able to sort out and figure out how I was going to do it. So I was able to provide the best kind of non-emotional response. But I always appreciated, like I said, the taking the long way to kind of sort it out. And that's exactly what I needed, which again, it was only like another like 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how fast we walk. But I always appreciated that opportunity to think completely and then respond. So I think just the act of walking away, putting yourself in a little bit of the silence, giving yourself the permission to wander with your thoughts or mull those thoughts over, because I was on a bit of a time crunch. So that was kind of the thoughts that I came when it came to grounding and anchoring. So I would love to hear your thoughts on those. Kind of what do you reach to? What do you gravitate to? Are you still trying to find it? Are you still trying to discover it? What would you put on your distractions list? I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I have definitely jotted down some of the ones that you all shared to add to my current distraction list. So I appreciate that. So I think it's one of those that a lot of times we don't realize that we kind of already instinctively do these. I feel like the breathing can kind of build into it, but then there's those intentional ways to do it. So I thought, again, this was a really, really kind of great start to the mind map as well as the grounding and anchoring thoughts, especially when it comes to resilience, because then I always go back to kind of some of my nautical and maritime scenarios. And so that's one of those, what makes you resilient in a store sometimes can be that grounding and anchoring point. And this is one of those that if you didn't come up with anything, don't worry, you can actually work on these the rest of the week. That is what I now think has been so special about the mind maps is it's just kind of another added food for thought as you look at different ways to incorporate the theme for each month into kind of your day-to-day practices. And as always, even as I move through the slides and the different topics and the different presentations, please feel free to continue to put your responses in the chat because this is a space here for you to kind of share that and put it out into the universe. So now we're going to move to the rosebud thorn. So if you are working in your September journal, this is going to be on page 50, which will close out that previous week. And if you're already in your October journal, this is going to be on a blank spot. So it could be another notes page or maybe in the scratch pad for that particular week. But you have two options depending on what your preference is. And so the rose is going to be the win, the highlight, something that made you happy, that made you smile from this past week. The bud is something that you're looking forward to, something that you're excited about, or something that is maybe out on the horizon that you haven't quite figured out what it's going to be. And then thorn is going to be the challenge, something that maybe didn't go so well, or something that is just taking up too much time, energy, and effort on your part that just kind of deserves to be acknowledged. And what I do always appreciate about these is it is an opportunity to look and see the highs and the lows and everything in between from your previous week, because sometimes it just needs its moment to sit and look, and then you get to now make that intentional decision of are you going to carry some of that stuff over into this next week? Are you going to leave it into the past week? So as always, um, for the highlight this week, I did go. I know I love the brain laundry as well, but I feel like I had to adjust it for the season because don't worry, my total will be back. I just need to make him more fall appropriate. And so the highlight for me was I went and saw the musical The Lightning Thief. And this is one that I really like. It's based on the Percy Jackson series. I love the music for this. I got to see the original cast when I was in the US, and this was definitely similar version, but it had been updated for a UK audience, and they had way more special effects. So it was really fun. It's always a good time. I enjoy live theater, so I appreciated going to that. The emerging opportunity. I think I was a little on the older side for some of those, so it doesn't make sense. I was like, I always love when there's a show that brings in the younger crowds. The emerging opportunity, my drama class has started back up again, and I enjoy hanging out with all of them as well as just the challenge of being able to think on my feet, putting some of those other public speaking skills to test. And then a challenge, honestly, work was just a bit rough this week. I had to go into the office a few times, and I just have clients that aren't cooperating on an appropriate time scale. So as always, I feel like you all are the best accountability buddies that I have, and I genuinely enjoy checking in with each and every one of you if you share your rosebud thorns in the chat, because this is an opportunity for us to celebrate all those as well as acknowledge some of that extra love and support or that we are thinking of you. So I am going to stop talking and I'm going to play a song, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And clearly, it was a roller coaster for quite a few of us, but I always appreciate the opportunity of being able to just put these thoughts and feelings out into the universe for what I consider a pretty elegantly simplistic exercise. I find the rosebud thorn quite valuable, and I feel like it just keeps getting, a far more special spot in my heart as we work through these, just because it's so nice to, again, acknowledge all of the things that went well, all of the things that maybe we need to work on or get excited about, but also just acknowledge that there can be some hard times, some dark spots, some low points. And I feel like there's just kind of a privilege to be able to reflect on that. So thank you, everybody, for sharing that. And same thing with everybody who continues to show up to these things and share those things. Um, because sometimes it's just nice to not feel that you have to tackle all these things alone. So thank you, everybody. So now we're going to move into the weekly planner pages. And what I love about these is that you can always start with asking yourself, what do you need? What do you need from this week? Because what you need this week may be exactly what's written on the page, or maybe what you need from this week is something completely different, or maybe what you need from this page is a break. You need a break from some of these sections. So just because I present them in a particular way, or that some of the examples that are included in the chat does not mean that is the only way to do this. There is no right or wrong way to set up these pages. You can repurpose them, you can do all of these amazing ideas, and that's where it comes back to what do you need? And so I always like to kind of add that refrain here because, again, there are no journal police. There is no one that's going to say this right or wrong, but I also feel like you should kind of challenge yourself to maybe try some new things, but at the same time, I am a creature of habit, so a lot of my pages would absolutely look the same. They would kind of bore everybody to tears because it's just that anchoring or diligence for me that I feel like helps me kind of tackle everything. So we are going to start on the top of page 26 in your October journal, or if you are still closing out on your September journal, that's going to be page 52. So page 26 in October, page 52 in September. And so I always start at the top with this week I want to feel, but I always ask myself, how do I want to feel this time next week? This is my opportunity to kind of build that equilibrium point. How can I come back as I have experienced the rose, the bud, and the thorn that I just had for this week? How can I come back to taking that intentional optimism of what I want my week to look like? But you can always include, maybe this is more the summary of what the week is going to look like based on all of the other sections that we have filled out. And so these can always be maybe a particular word, maybe it's your word of the year, maybe it's your word of the month, maybe it is leaning into the theme, so maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's a different word for each day. Maybe it's a different word for each type of event you need to go to. I am one of those, I don't always like to connect to a single word, too much pressure. But maybe sometimes it is 1% better, 5% happier, 15% more hydrated, or leaning into some of the duality of less something, more something. Stickers are great. Doodles are fantastic. I think I saw Gloria in the chat, but her doodle's up there. So I think it's also whatever is going to kind of put a smile on your face, or maybe be that kind of key point to help you kind of get through the week as you are experiencing maybe some of those thorns. Or sometimes it's not really a word, it's a phrase, it's an idea. So I'm going to turn on a quick song, but please share in the chat how you want to feel this time next week, and we'll see you soon. So now that we have how we want to feel this time next week, we can now overlay the weekly major three goals and the weekly to-dos. And I feel like these are the things that are going to help us guide and or help provide parameters or kind of the variables we have to work with in order to feel the way we want to feel this time next week. So the major three goals section can absolutely be the major three things that you need to get done, or maybe these are minor things. And just because there are three things doesn't mean it always has to be three. Maybe it's two things, maybe it's one thing, maybe this is like, I need a sticker here. And so another way to approach these is categories. So you have the three different categories. So maybe you have a mind, a body, a soul, a self, a home, and a work. Maybe it is just the three things that you need to get done. One of the examples I say for that is it was kind of tax season, so I needed to do taxes. I needed to renew my passport. And I think I had to drop off and schedule like a maintenance event. So those three became like the weekly major three. But I tend to lean a little bit more into the mental and emotional reminders for this. So a lot of that is excusing myself from the unimportant. Hydration is going to be a big kick here because, as I had mentioned, I'm not sleeping super great. So that means I tend to grab more caffeinated drinks. So I need to stay hydrated. So I do have water at my table right now. But other ways to approach this is maybe this is where you kind of focus on your routine for that day. So you have things that you want to accomplish early in the day, midday, or even the evening, leaning into the alliterations. So a frog, a fun, a fierce, a learn, a let go, and a lean into. Maybe this is where the bingo board lives. We love the gamification of some of our to-dos and goals, or even tying some of those categories into the specific to-dos that will support, excuse me, the accomplishment of those categories. I do like the one example in the middle, bottom middle. They actually only have two major things, and that's a home and work component. Maybe this is where you need to put the weekly affirmations. Maybe you need to switch the goals and the weekly to-dos, just because those grids are far easier to put a to-do list than maybe the blank page. Or maybe this is where some of those affirmations or manifestations. I know that one of our other facilitators, Bailey, she works with Jenny, our AI personalized coach. And so she uses kind of those affirmations in that particular section there to carry through. And then we move into the weekly to-dos. And so this can either tie directly into those goals, or maybe these are just the things that need to happen this week. And I think that's one of those things you can utilize it. And so you can do a traditional to-do list. I am a ta-da person just because I love the act of celebrating when I have accomplished something because I appreciate the participation ribbon as much as the next millennial. And so that's usually kind of what my default is. But I've had to lean a little bit more into the Eisenhower matrix. And that's just because I'm a little out of my depth in some of these situations, especially when it comes to just upkeep and maintenance, because it's a little bit trickier. And so that's the do, decide, delegate, or delete. But as I said, I have had to lean into and celebrate my leaning into the delegation because I do have a hard time with that. I do it quite well in kind of work professional settings, but when it comes to my personal life, delegating is really tricky. And I never delete anything, I just delay it. Because if it's on some sort of to-do list, it's got to get to done at some point, and I'm the only one that can do it. That I am the only one that can to do it, so I might as well figure out how to incorporate it. Another one recommended is the Pomodoro technique, and that is quite helpful if you have a bigger task that you can kind of break up into smaller individual steps to get done. So you can utilize it that way. Maybe this is again the bingo board. Maybe it's also just shuffling or categorizing again your to-do list with maybe a needs and a wants, or organizing it into calls, errands, follow-ups, emails, or maybe this is kind of where that sticker needs to go, or just the gentle reminder to do this instead of, and don't do this. Maybe it is the doodles, the stickers, the pictures. Maybe it's a to be or a not to do. I like the idea of the work to dos and the personal to dos broken up into that needs and wants. So I am going to go back to the start of this section. I would love to hear how you incorporate your weekly major three goals and your to-do list together. So again, we are on page 26 in your October journal or page 52 in your September journal. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to play some music, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So we are now going to stay still on page 26 in your October journal and page 52 in your September journal. And we're going to move to the habits and activities section, which is that bottom section, right? Catherine, I know, I love it. I love Newsies so much, so it always makes me really happy. And I even had that on my list to kind of tackle this week as well. So I love the habit and activity tracker. We always kind of get asked what's the difference between the monthly habit tracker as well as the weekly. My thoughts on it is that the monthly are the things that you want to do every single day. I then bring them over into the weekly habit tracker as the lens of reality. How much time can I actually devote to that so I'm not feeling pressured or overextended? So, as I said, my top three, I am a creature of habit. It's always move, read, and journal. And so it's how much time can I dedicate to each of those because depending on workload, whatever else I have scheduled. So sometimes the move can be an absolutely specific workout that I have time to do, or sometimes moving is just the to and the fro walking between either my home and the office or my home and the errands. So it always can look a little bit different. So these are certainly activities that you can do. Maybe you want to set a goal to that, or maybe you don't. That's what the flexibility is. So you can always just cover those up. But I think the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing is pretty good. I also think this is one of those that you can utilize to help connect with your journal. So if you're having a hard time with that, so maybe include, reviewing your intentions page or double checking your trackers. It's a way to kind of help yourself within that. And I like that design. Maybe your weekday habits and activities look different than your weekends. I like the top right one as well as the bottom left one because that is just the gentle reminder that just because there are 5 lines does not mean you need to tackle 5 different habits and activities every single week. Like I said, I'm one of those that it's a pretty solid three. I may incorporate something else, but usually I stick to the three because I really want to continue to provide the time that I've dedicated for those because those are the things that energize me. They're the things that, how I charge my battery. So those are things, like 3 things that I always want to incorporate in that. And then I love to highlight this 5 days to schedule every month. I actually turn these into kind of week themes based on just what I've done. So the past couple week, it was a reset week. It was a learning week. This past week, it was kind of a fun week. So it is moving into like I said, I had a pretty rough week just kind of at work and those things. So I may focus a little bit more on the self-care because I think a lot of it was also, I felt like I was just taking things maybe a little too personal at work. And when that happens, I think it's more of I need to kind of sort out some of those boundaries in my head. So I am going to probably focus a little bit more on that self-care this week, just so I can work on that. And then come to my socials before. I love the visual of all these things. And as I've mentioned, I repurpose my expense tracker now. That's just not something that works for me, either the expense tracker or the sleep tracker. I now want to celebrate bucket lists and adventure lists. So I do start adding these, and I love these for inspiration because a lot of these are things that we already kind of do and incorporate. And I want to give them something, a special little place. And so, again, part of my distraction list is take the mindful walk in nature. That's always so nice. It's always relieving. These just look so pretty. And same thing, we've got other autumn bucket lists in that capacity. The pumpkin, the pumpkin everything, the apple everything, the cozy turn on your oven all day type things are starting to be there. So again, I just love all of these, and I always challenge you to incorporate maybe a bucket list item as one of your habits and activities because I think it's so fun. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And like a very subtle social media plug, if you're not following Silk and Sonder on Instagram and some of the other social medias, highly recommend it. And I actually made a very conscious effort to go through and kind of curate my social media a little bit more. And I feel like I have mastered the algorithm because now when I go into the For You recommendations, all I get are adventure lists and bucket lists and all the motivational fall doodles that you see. And it just makes me so happy that I have cracked the code. And so I get all of the fun visuals that just make me happy and really love it. So it is certainly worth the time and effort to do so. And like I said, I now get more joy than I probably should from social media in that regards. So we are now going to move over to the next page. I lovingly refer to this as the B side because, like any record, we just completed the A side, so we listened to all of those hits. And the B side is not necessarily something we always listen to, but we know that there are some gems when you need them. But for the most part, I do not flip the record to the B side. But if you do, you can join us on page 27 in your October journal or page 53 in your September journal. And we're going to start with the meal plan. And so this can absolutely be a meal plan. It can be something that you plan for, it can be something kind of designed purely as a meal plan, or you can go into the repurpose category. So maybe this is something that you do plan ahead for, or maybe this is something that you track real time when it comes to the meals. And that can be because you're on a specific healthcare journey or you're working with a healthcare professional. So it is certainly something really great for that. Maybe this is where you want to track the one good thing, or maybe leaning into the prompt or the theme for this month. So, what was one thing that you did that was resilient for the day? Maybe this is where all those wonderful stickers live. Maybe this is where your to do lives or your meetings. Maybe this is where you need to have the daily doodles or that idea to kind of give yourself that break if that made it onto your distraction list or your grounding list. Maybe this again, a health track. Maybe this is where you put the daily affirmations that you get from the Silk and Sonder app. Kimberly, love that. She does Webster's Word of the Day. So look at you learning. And then I've used this as a clothing plan and a wardrobe tracker, especially when I travel, be it for work or personal. I'm actually coming up on a vacation, so I'm going to utilize it for that. And I'll have an example, probably not this social, but the next one next weekend. And then maybe this is the kind of your end of your day checklist that you do. So you need to do all those tasks for the end of the day. Maybe it is the ta-das, the habit stacking, or getting creative with those haikus. You feel like you can also utilize the mind body health plan as something that you plan for, or it's also something that you can track in real time. And so I think you can do it that. Sherry, don't worry, I'll go back to that. And so you can embrace the alliteration, or again, some of the motivation highlighted the day. And Nathania, here's her social shout out. I love the idea of the I feel and I need. It is such a very, very powerful, truly, truly mental check-in. And I think it's one of those, if we just take the time and energy and effort to do it, I think it helps with that, where it's kind of asking how you're feeling right now and what you need. You can do that kind of any time of day. I know it's one of those you can do at the beginning of the day. But it's one of those that's so powerful because I feel like you can truly take some adjustments there. I like the idea of additional, including self-care. Maybe you want to lean into those 7 types of rest, because sometimes you are not physically tired. Sometimes it is a couple other things, but maybe this is reading care, the reading log, home. Maybe it's just simple as write down 3 things you like about yourself today. When was the last time you actually took some time to write out a list of things you liked yourself? I find that one a lot harder than I think. And it's the same thing as getting into the perspective of what would someone else say about you? What do they like about you? And then again, here's more iconography. Like I said, these show up on my For You page and it makes me so happy. So these are things to remember this fall, as well as things to leave behind this week. I love a good pun. And don't worry, I will come back to these, but it's just those really kind of lovely, friendly reminders, because sometimes you just need that. And so you can write that down or include those things. So why not embrace all that is a fall and these type of ideas? And then we have the shopping list, which can go hand in hand with that meal plan, or the way I will utilize it with that wardrobe or clothing tracker is these are the like accessories that I need to bring. So it's usually business cards, laptop, adapters, chargers, all of those things. So that's kind of how I include it. And then maybe this is where those bingo boards live. I just know that we have quite a few birthdays coming up in October. So I would challenge each of you to come up with a birthday bingo for one of the weeks, just because I think it's fun and I think everyone should celebrate it. But maybe you're doing a fall bingo. Maybe you do celebrate Halloween. So you're looking at like Halloween bingo in preparation for that. Or you can turn it into your social check-in, your planning, the shopping list, the don't buy, the buy. We are less than 100 days out from Christmas. So maybe that's where you're going to start planning. Or maybe it's more of those kind of glimmer bingos, the self-care, the what are you watching, reading, listening. Maybe this is where those wardrobe tracker lives. So I am going to go back to the beginning of this little section and I will go through, but please let me know in the chat if there are other slides that you want to see. And we will close out with maybe kind of a spooky song. I think it kind of can be. But we will see you soon for the close. Welcome back. To answer your question, Gina, who knew that we needed to have a mashup of Coolio's Gangster's Paradise with Billie Eilish's Bad Guy? I think it's amazingly clever, and who knew if I would ever use those in the same sentence. But I love their Spinfany. They are a female string quartet. They're amazing. They have such great songs. I play them often. So if they're not in your Spotify playlist, they ought to be. I highly recommend them. But we get to that very last section on page 27 or page 53, depending on your journal, and that is the I am loving section. And this is where you just get to say what you're happy about, what's making you smile, all of the humor. I'm definitely a summer girly, but I feel like, again, my For You page has got me so excited about fall that I almost think it's like, who is this person? So all the ghosts, all the witches, all the pumpkins, all those things are living. So I have been fully embracing that, but I do think it's an opportunity to just kind of make it a little lighter, how you make it nice, how to make it does that. As always, we have reached the end. Can you believe it? We would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. You guys provide such amazing inspiration because I said if I just had to show my examples from my journal, y'all would be bored to tears because they look the same each and every week. So we'd love to see that. We do still have the AI coaching going on. You can try that out at concierge at silkandsonder.com. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the link in the chat to the Spotify playlist. I make a different playlist for each of my socials, and they are broken down by month, theme, and that. So you can always find them there, as well as I highly recommend following the other facilitators in Spotify because that's just a jam that I think is. We have done the curation for you to some extent. Also, you'll see in the chat the link to the YouTube page if you ever need a social but you don't have one on the schedule. There's also Bailey, our amazing facilitator, Bailey. She is hosting a live event in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So if you are near that, the information is there. That's going to be on November 1st. So if you want to kind of join her in that capacity, she would love to have you. Jen also just put in the Eventbrite link for the upcoming socials, because as we said, she and I are going to swap some roles tomorrow. So we'll be doing another monthly setup as well as a weekly setup. So you'll get to hang out with Team Texas on Sunday as well. We would love to see you there. But as always, thank you so much for joining us. We are so glad that you are here. I know you guys are going to have an amazing rest of your day, an amazing rest of your weekend as we dive into this next month with resilience and all the things we're going to learn about it. Because honestly, we worked really hard with bravery, so we'll take another little step there, but we're going to kind of repair some of those things. But we're so glad that you're here, and you're going to have a great day, and we will see you again soon. Bye.
If I could reach the top of the world, be all I am, it'd be so beautiful.